Imagine you've just been handed the reins to like a $50 million project.
Oh, boy.
Right. You sit down at your desk, you log into your enterprise software, and there are just no guardrails.
Not at all.
Just absolutely no templates, no standardized structures, and, 1,000 different ways for your team to accidentally overspend by millions before you've even had lunch.
Yeah, it is a scenario that plays out way more often than you might think. Stepping into a project management role in a massive enterprise system, it could really feel like trying to drink from a fire hose.
Oh, for sure.
You've got all this data, these cost centers, endless hierarchies. You were expected to orchestrate this massive undertaking, but the tools just look like an airplane dashboard to a new user.
Which is exactly our mission for this deep dive. Today, we are opening up a stack of SAP S/4HANA technical manuals to uncover how you actually prevent that exact nightmare. We're taking this really dense, highly technical architecture of SAP S/4HANA's project system, what they call PS structures, and we are translating it. We're turning it into a practical survival guide for you, the new project manager.
Because the secret here is that the system actually provides the exact frameworks you need to organize all that chaos and, strictly control your costs.
You just need to know how the logic works.
Right. And understanding that logic, it actually starts before you even think about assigning a single task or spending a single dollar.
Right. It starts at the very top of the system architecture.
Yeah, with how you establish a project's foundational identity.
So if the project landscape is essentially just muddy water, how does SAP force you to filter it before you begin?
Well, according to the documentation, it begins with two very distinct elements. You've got the project profile and the project definition.
And for a new project manager, blurring the line between those two is like a very quick way to completely break your setup.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The distinction is vital because they serve entirely different purposes in the project lifecycle.
Let's start with the project profile then.
Okay, so think of the profile as like the ultimate default settings menu created by your system administrators. When you first sit down to create a new project structure, the system actually forces you to select the project profile first.
And this profile carries all those fundamental parameters for processing the project, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Just to give you a sense of what parameters we mean, we're talking about system-wide rules here. For instance, the profile dictates which settlement schema is valid.
Right, which means the specific accounting rules for how costs generated by your project are eventually passed on to the departments actually paying for it.
Right. It also assigns the factory calendar, which I find super interesting because that tells the system exactly which days are working days and which are holidays for your specific location.
Yes, so your automated scheduling doesn't tell a construction crew to show up on Thanksgiving.
Exactly. And it goes even deeper than that, doesn't it?
It does. The profile dictates the highest level organizational buckets, like the controlling area, which is SAP's master bucket for internal management accounting.
I mean, if you had to manually configure every single one of these global parameters every single time you spun up a project,
the administrative overhead would just be paralyzing.
Not to mention the risk. I kind of think of the project profile almost like the genetic code or a master franchise template for a global fast food chain.
I like that analogy.
It ensures that every new project inherits the correct baseline traits. A new PM doesn't have to reinvent the wheel or risk making a massive structural error on day one by, accidentally setting the project currency to yen instead of euros.
Yeah, the master template concept captures the mechanics perfectly there. So the system uses that profile to automatically generate the second piece of the puzzle, which is the project definition.
And the manual describes the project definition as the binding framework for all organizational elements created within a project.
Right, so basically the project definition is the actual specific project you are working on.
Okay.
And the moment it's created, the system just takes all those values from your chosen project profile and hard codes them into this new definition.
But this introduces a really fascinating safeguard built into SAP's architecture.
It does.
Because if you consider the life cycle of a massive enterprise, say 6 months from now, a global system admin might need to update that master project profile.
Right. Maybe they are changing a global holiday in the factory calendar or updating the default settlement rules for the upcoming fiscal year.
Oh, wait, I see where this is going. If you have an active multi-million-dollar project running based on that template and an admin goes in and changes the master template.
Does your project suddenly adopt a different working calendar overnight?
Yeah. Does it just break?
The system actively prevents that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, if the master project profile is altered later on, those changes have absolutely no effect on the values that were already copied into existing project definitions.
So it essentially severs the umbilical cord.
Exactly.
The genetic code was copied at the moment of conception, and after that, your project is a fully independent entity with its own historical stability.
And that historical stability is just non-negotiable for enterprise accounting. I mean, it gives the organization the flexibility to refine their master templates for future initiatives without silently corrupting all the ongoing work, budgets, and timelines of active projects across the globe.
That makes a ton of sense. Okay, so your project has its DNA, the project definition is established, the currency is locked, the calendars are set.
Right.
But a definition is just a framework, right? We all know you have to break massive projects down into phases and tasks. But SAP is notorious for being, well, incredibly rigid.
Very rigid, yes.
How does its specific work breakdown structure, the WBS, force you to actually map this out?
Well, the rigidity you mentioned is actually a feature, not a bug here.
Okay.
You cannot manage a massive corporate initiative as one giant, formless blob of money and effort.
Right.
The SAP work breakdown structure forces you to slice the project logically into a hierarchy of what it calls WBS elements.
So it's about slicing the elephant.
Exactly. This hierarchical splitting forms the functional basis for process planning, scheduling, capacity planning, and ultimately project control.
Okay, so instead of a generic project blob, let's use a house construction analogy here just to ground it.
Sure, that works.
If the project definition is build a custom home, you don't just hand a crew a picture of a house and a pile of money.
Right, please don't do that.
You build a hierarchy. So your top level is overall project. Underneath that, you might have WBS elements for foundation, framing, plumbing, and interior.
Okay.
And under interior, you'd break it down further into like drywall, flooring, and paint.
And that hierarchy does two things simultaneously. First, it gives executive management a clear, aggregated picture of the project.
Right.
They can just look at the interior WBS element and see the total cost and timeline. But second, it gives the operational teams highly specific assignable units. The manual actually notes that elements not subdivided any further are essentially what they call work packages.
Work packages. So the work package is the absolute bottom of the tree.
Exactly.
It's the terminal node where the actual hammer hits the nail. In our house analogy, the work package isn't build the house. It is specifically install drywall on the first floor.
Yes. And if you fail to break the project down to that level of granularity, those higher level WBS elements just become black holes for costs.
Because you wouldn't know where the money went.
Exactly. You would know you spent $50,000 on the interior, but you wouldn't know if that money went to drywall, flooring, or a highly expensive custom sink.
Right. But the manual points out that creating this hierarchy isn't just about listing physical parts.
No, it's not.
There's this highly logical methodology to how you structure these elements, and you can view it through three distinct lenses, right? By phase, by function, or by object.
Those three perspectives are crucial for modeling the reality of complex work.
Walk us through them.
Sure. So structuring by phase means you're process-oriented.
Yeah.
You're organizing by chronological steps like pre-construction, construction, and inspection.
Makes sense?
Then structuring by function means you're organizing by disciplines like engineering, procurement, or legal.
Okay.
And finally, structuring by object means you're organizing by the physical deliverables, so the roof, the foundation, the HVAC unit.
The source material actually gives a really detailed manufacturing example to illustrate this. The hot air circulating rotor.
Yes, a classic SAP example.
Let's look at how SAP recommends breaking this down. So your top node is the overall project, the hot air circulating rotor. For the second level, you might break it down functionally and by phase.
Right.
So your level 2 WBS elements are like jigs and fixtures, planning, and engineering.
And notice how those level 2 elements aren't physical parts of the rotor.
Right. Planning and engineering are processes.
Exactly. But a project ultimately has to produce a physical thing. So if we look under that engineering node, the WBS actually shifts its lens and breaks down by object.
Okay, so it changes mid-tree.
Yep. You create subordinate WBS elements for the rotor shaft, the rotor blades, and the controls.
And then it goes even deeper, because under the controls object, the system shifts back to a functional lens, breaking it down into mechanics, electronics, and hydraulics.
Right, because you're visually and structurally mapping the exact disciplines required to build that specific physical component under that specific process phase.
But wait. If I mix and match phases, functions, and objects in the exact same hierarchical tree, doesn't that just make the reporting a total mess?
It seems like it would, yeah.
Like, how does the accounting department even know what they're looking at if level 2 is a process phase, but level 3 is a physical part, and level 4 is a functional discipline?
That is a very common concern for a new project manager. But here's the trick. SAP separates the work breakdown structure, which is basically the conceptual and logistical map of the project, from the financial accounting rules.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, the WBS is designed to reflect how the work is actually executed in the real world. The reporting stays clean because the financial rules are applied individually to those specific bottom-level work packages, regardless of where they sit in the visual tree.
Okay, so what you're saying is the hierarchy isn't just a bureaucratic exercise to please the finance team.
Not at all.
It is a true reflection of the operational workflow.
Exactly the point. And the manual provides a second example that proves this flexibility beautifully. They talk about an IT investment program.
Right, because in IT, a strictly object-oriented structure often falls apart. You aren't building a physical rotor shaft.
Exactly.
So how does the IT hierarchy look in comparison?
Well, the top WBS element is an information system. Underneath that, the project breaks down functionally into 3 branches: hardware, software, and licenses.
Which makes perfect sense for an IT rollout. Hardware procurement is a totally different function than software configuration.
But then look at the software branch. Underneath that functional node, it breaks down into the actual objects being delivered.
Yep.
You have a WBS element for the operating system and another for the specific application. So the lens you use to organize the WBS changes dynamically depending on what is most logical for that specific branch of the project tree.
Okay, so organizing tasks beautifully on a chart with these mixed likeses, that's great for logistics. It looks fantastic in a kickoff presentation.
Very pretty.
But let's be real. A project manager's real nightmare, the thing that actually gets you fired, is losing control of the budget.
Oh, yeah.
A chart doesn't stop people from spending money. How does this hierarchy actually act as a financial control mechanism?
This is where we shift from viewing the WBS as just a logistical planning tool to utilizing it as the project's financial engine.
The money engine.
Exactly. And the control mechanisms that make this happen are called operative indicators.
Operative indicators. So these are essentially attributes you assign to specific WBS elements to determine exactly what business transactions that element is allowed to carry out, right?
Yes. The system forces you to be explicit. The 3 main indicators a PM needs to understand are the planning element, the account assignment element, and the billing element.
Let me try an analogy here to make this concrete.
Go for it.
I'm picturing these operative indicators like physical electrical switches on a circuit board attached to every single WBS element in your tree.
Okay, let's trace the wiring on that.
So if you want to estimate future costs for the rotor blades element, you have to literally flip the planning element switch.
Right.
If you are running a customer project and you need to generate invoices for the work, you flip the billing element switch.
Yep.
But the most critical one is the account assignment switch. If you do not explicitly flip the account assignment switch on a specific WBS element, you literally cannot charge a purchase order, an expense report, or a contractor's invoice to it.
The circuit board metaphor is highly accurate because if the switch isn't flipped, the circuit is broken. The system will just hard reject the cost.
Wow.
Yeah, it acts as a built-in anti-fraud and anti-overspend mechanism. The manual states as all objects that can be assigned costs, like purchase orders, internal orders, or networks, can only be assigned to a WBS element if that account assignment indicator is set.
We should probably clarify the term networks here, because to anyone outside of SAP, a network sounds like IT infrastructure, routers and servers.
It can be confusing.
But in the context of the SAP project system, a network is actually a specific routing and scheduling object. It tracks the actual chronological sequence of tasks and dependencies.
That distinction is crucial. A network dictates that, say, task B cannot start until task A is finished.
Okay.
And those networks generate costs, labor hours, machine time. Those network costs have to land somewhere, and they can only land on a WBS element with an active account assignment switch.
So the switches control where the money can flow, but where does the budget actually come from in the first place? Like, how does a multi-million-dollar project get its funding loaded into this structure?
Very often, it comes from a higher-level capital investment program. You can link your specific WBS elements to a position in a corporate investment program to receive a formalized budget.
Oh, I see.
And SAP handles the math of this distribution with absolute strictness, whether you distribute it top-down or bottom-up.
Walk us through what top-down versus bottom-up budgeting actually looks like in the system.
Sure. So in a top-down approach, the executive team assigns a lump sum budget directly to the highest WBS element.
Okay, so allocating $2 million to the top information system node.
Exactly. The project manager then distributes that $2 million down into the lower elements, like hardware and software.
Got it.
Now, in a bottom-up approach, you might assign specific budgets directly to the lower elements based on vendor quotes. So if the hardware node receives $500,000 and the software node receives $500,000, the system automatically rolls that budget up to the superior WBS elements.
Which guarantees mathematical consistency. You can't have a scenario where the sub-elements are secretly budgeted for more money than the parent element is aware of.
No, you can't.
The aggregation is automatic and immutable.
The system enforces this consistency aggressively. And to build on your circuit board analogy from earlier, once real financial data begins flowing through those circuits, the system's strictness escalates dramatically to protect the integrity of the accounting.
Wait, what happens when the money starts flowing?
The manual notes that once actual costs, commitments, or budgets exist for a WBS element, you are completely locked out of changing its company code or business area.
Oh, wow. To put that in perspective for you listening, the company code is the legal entity used for tax and external financial reporting, and the business area represents your specific operational division.
Exactly. Think about the implications of that. Once real money, like a paid invoice or a signed purchase order, is attached to that specific WBS node, you cannot casually move that node to a different legal entity or division just because you want to reorganize your chart.
Because you can't just pull the rug out from under the corporate tax department.
Right.
The financial reality dictates the permanence of your logistical structure. If you realize you built the hierarchy wrong after the money is spent, you have a massive administrative headache on your hands.
Which is exactly why understanding the project profile defaults and properly mapping the phase, function, and object lenses before you flip those account assignment switches is so critical for a new PM.
Okay, so the budget is locked by these operative indicators. The structure is permanent. But a project isn't static, right? You don't just spend $50 million on day one.
Hopefully not.
A project has a timeline, a heartbeat. How does the system restrict when that money can actually be spent and when work can be done?
So to manage the project's heartbeat over time, the project manager uses system statuses.
Okay.
The active system status determines exactly which business transactions you are allowed to perform at any given moment. And much like the budget, these statuses cascade down from the project definition to the WBS elements and down to the subordinate work packages.
So it's a waterfall effect of permissions. What are the critical statuses a PM needs to master to control this timeline?
Well, the life cycle begins with the status created, abbreviated as CRTD. When you first build your WBS, it defaults to this status.
Makes sense.
In the created state, the system allows you to plan dates, plan future costs, and basically build out your structural hierarchy. But crucially, it strictly blocks you from posting any actual costs or commitments.
So it's the sandbox mode. You're drafting the blueprint, drawing the circuits, but the power is turned off.
Exactly. Then, when you are officially ready to execute, you manually shift the status to released, or REL.
Okay.
This throws the main breaker. Releasing an element allows you to assign those scheduling networks, attach production orders, and critically, it opens the door to post actual costs.
So the project is officially alive and spending money.
Yes.
So created is for planning and released is for execution. But the end of a project is rarely a clean break. And from what I understand, the transition from active work to project closure is where a lot of new PMs stumble.
It's very common.
The system has two distinct closing statuses, right? Technically completed, or TECO, and closed, or CLS due.
And blurring the line between TICO and closed will cause immediate friction with your finance department. They serve very different logistical realities.
Okay, let's use a real-world scenario to stress test this difference, going back to our custom house build analogy.
Sure.
Let's say the framing crew has finished installing every piece of timber. The physical framing work is 100% complete. As the PM, I want to lock down the framing WBS element so no one can accidentally charge new hours or new materials to it.
Right. You want to seal it off.
However, I know the lumber supplier is notoriously disorganized, and they probably won't send the final invoice for the wood for another month.
Oh, classic.
But I need to pay that bill eventually to avoid a lien on the house. Which status do I use?
This scenario is the exact reason the technically completed, or TECO, status exists.
Right.
When you set an element to TECO, You are telling the system that the logistic work is finished. The system immediately prevents any new purchase orders or scheduling networks from being assigned to that WBS element. It stops new commitments from being made.
So it puts a hard stop on new work.
But, and this is the key, it still allows actual costs to trickle in for commitments that were already made.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it keeps the financial door propped open just enough for accounts payable to process that notoriously late lumber invoice against the original purchase order.
That is a brilliant piece of system design, because if I misunderstood the manual and immediately jumped to the closed status...
If you use closed or CLSD, you would lock yourself out entirely.
Really?
Yeah, the closed status signals that the element is completed from both a logistic and an accounting point of view. It outright prohibits all business transactions. The book is shut, locked, and put on the shelf.
So what happens when the lumber supplier finally mails that invoice and my status is set to closed?
The SAP system will just reject the invoice. Accounts payable will not be able to process the payment against that WBS element, and you will literally have to formally justify revoking the closed status just to pay a legitimate bill.
That sounds awful.
It is an administrative nightmare that TECO completely avoids.
So what that practically means is TECO translates to, tools down, but the accounting ledger remains open, while CLSD translates to the ledger is finalized and audited.
Precisely.
Mastering that single nuance alone gives a new project manager incredible control over the chaotic tail end of a project lifecycle.
And when you combine all of these elements we've talked about, you move from being a bystander just watching a project happen to an architect actively controlling its physics.
Let's summarize the journey we've taken through these manuals then.
Yeah.
We started at the absolute top, recognizing that the project profile is the genetic code that ensures standardized, historically stable setups, which saves you from catastrophic global configuration errors. We then explored how the work breakdown structure forces you to slice the monolith into manageable hierarchies, allowing you to seamlessly shift your organizational lens between the chronological phase, the functional discipline, and the physical object.
And we saw how the WBS separates that visual logic from the strict financial accounting rules.
Exactly. We then wired that structure up using operative indicators, those circuit board switches like the account assignment element that physically prevent unauthorized spending and lock your budgets into the correct corporate legal entities.
Right.
Finally, we managed the heartbeat of the project using system statuses cascading from created and released down to the critical distinction between technically completed and closed, ensuring the timeline stays strictly on the rails from kickoff to final invoice.
It really is a comprehensive framework for organizational survival. And, if we pull back from the enterprise software for a moment, the underlying logic of this framework leaves you with a really provocative question to ponder.
Oh, where does this logic apply outside of SAP?
Well, think about the sheer effectiveness of the work breakdown structure. It is designed to model the complexity, control the costs, and manage the timeline of massive, chaotic corporate projects.
Sure.
But what if you applied this exact same phase, function, and object framework to your own life? How could it fundamentally change how you plan and execute your own major life goals?
Oh, wow. That is a fascinating shift in perspective.
Right. Whether you are planning a massive home renovation, organizing a cross-country move, or strategizing a complex career pivot. If you stop looking at your goals as an overwhelming monolith and start building your own personal WPS,
defining your work packages,
flipping your own operative indicators for where your time and money go, and managing your statuses, what could you actually accomplish?
It turns the impossible blob into an actionable plan. You've got your blueprint, now go build it. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into SAP project systems. Keep learning, and we'll see you next time.